Poor little girl crying begs the young billionaire to take her to school. What he does is unbelievable. The alarm clock went off at 6 on the dot. Dawson Parker opened his eyes and stared at the white ceiling of his apartment. Another day, another case, more numbers in the bank account. At 37, he had built the exact life he had planned. A partner at the law firm Wilson & Associates, a condo in downtown Chicago, and a black Audi that was practically his only companion. Dawson's morning routine ran like a Swiss watch. Strong coffee, navy blue suit, Italian leather briefcase. By 7:15, he was already driving through the city streets, mentally reviewing his arguments for a meeting with a millionaire client. The radio interrupted his thoughts. Accident on the Kennedy Expressway blocking 3 lanes. Traffic jam of at least an hour. Dawson swore under his breath. He couldn't be late. He made a sharp right turn, opting for an alternate route he rarely used. The streets were narrower here, with simple houses and small businesses, a world away from the one he frequented. That's when he passed a public school. Children were entering through the gates, some holding hands with parents, others in small, noisy groups. His gaze caught something out of the ordinary, a little girl sitting alone on the sidewalk, her head down. He couldn't explain why he slowed down. Maybe it was the contrast of the solitary figure against the cheerful movement around her. He parked the car a few yards ahead and looked in the rearview mirror. The girl remained motionless, her small shoulders shaking slightly. Dawson checked his watch. He had a meeting in 40 minutes. It wasn't his business, it wasn't his problem. Still, he got out of the car. "Is everything okay?" he asked, stopping at a respectful distance. The girl lifted her face, blonde hair framed eyes of a light blue that were now red from crying. She couldn't be more than 9 years old. She wore simple clothes, a worn-out backpack beside her. "Did you miss the school bus?" Dawson tried again. She sniffled, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her jacket. "No, I live right there." She pointed to a set of old apartment buildings across the street. "Then why are you crying out here?" The girl hesitated, studying him with a gaze that seemed too old for her childish face. "Do you have kids?" The question caught him off guard. "No." "You seem nice," she said, surprising him. "And you have a nice car." "Thanks, I guess," Dawson replied, confused by the turn the conversation was taking. The girl bit her lip, gathering her courage. Could you take me to school like a dad?" The words came out in a rush. "The other kids make fun of me because I don't have a dad. If a grown-up dropped me off at the door, just for today, maybe they'd stop." Something about the simplicity of the request hit him like a punch. Dawson looked into her eyes, a deep sadness, the kind no child should ever carry. "Where's your mum?" he asked gently. "Working. She leaves really early. I always walk alone." She adjusted her worn backpack. "My name is Maisie." Dawson glanced at his watch again. The meeting was important. He had spent weeks preparing for it. His career depended on these moments. "Dawson Parker," he replied, formally extending his hand. Her small fingers squeezed his with surprising confidence, and something in that innocent touch stirred something in him he couldn't explain. He took out his phone and typed a quick message. "Reschedule all morning meetings, personal emergency." "Let's go," he said, putting his phone away. "We don't want you to be late." Maisie's face lit up as if someone had switched on a light inside her. "Really? You're really going to take me?" "Of course. It's on the way." It wasn't, but that didn't matter now. They walked side by side to the car. Maisie climbed into the passenger seat with reverent care, as if she were entering a magical place. "Your car smells nice," she commented, buckling her seatbelt. During the short drive to the school entrance, Maisie talked non-stop about her science class, the book she was reading, how she wanted a dog one day. Dawson listened, responding with monosyllables, yet strangely absorbed in the innocent energy that filled his usually silent car. When they pulled up to the main entrance, children and parents were milling about, some glancing curiously at the sleek car. "This is it," Dawson said, turning off the engine. "Can you walk me to the door?" Her eyes pleaded, "So they can see." Without a word, Dawson got out, walked around the car, and opened her door. They walked together across the schoolyard, Maisie now standing a little taller, an almost imperceptible smile on her lips. At the building's entrance, she stopped and looked up at him. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. You can call me Dawson." Without warning, Maisie stepped forward, wrapped her arms around his waist, and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. "You're nice, Dawson. Bye." And then she ran inside, disappearing among the other children, her backpack bouncing from side to side. Dawson stood there for a moment, feeling the warmth of that unexpected hug. His hand lightly touched the cheek where her lips had been, a gesture so simple, so genuine. He returned to the car in silence. He started the engine but didn't drive off immediately. Something had changed inside him in the last 20 minutes, a strange feeling he couldn't name. In 15 years of his career, he had negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts, won impossible cases, dined with judges and politicians. But never, absolutely never, had he felt what that simple gesture from a little girl had just awakened. As he drove back to his office, the image of Maisie's sad blue eyes wouldn't leave his mind. And as much as he tried to focus on the work that awaited him, Dawson knew that something had been touched within him, something that had been dormant for far too long. The morning after his encounter with Maisie, Dawson woke up before the alarm. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, mentally replaying the previous day's events. The little blonde girl, her blue eyes full of sadness, the unexpected request. Why had he agreed? What had led him to postpone an important meeting to walk a strange child to school? There was no logic to it, and Dawson Parker was a man who lived by logic. The following days were an exercise in self-convincing. During meetings, when his mind wandered to Maisie's face, he forced himself back to the present. During lunches with clients, when he caught himself wondering what her life was like at that moment, he mentally reprimanded himself. A successful lawyer shouldn't be distracted by thoughts of some random little girl. On Friday, 3 days after their meeting, Dawson left the office at 2:30 in the afternoon. "Any appointments, Mr. Parker?" his secretary asked, clearly surprised. In 7 years, he had never left before 6. "Yes, something personal," he answered curtly, avoiding her gaze. He drove with no apparent destination, telling himself he was just enjoying the lighter afternoon traffic. When he found himself on the street of Maisie's school, he parked a few yards from the gate, keeping the engine running. "It's just curiosity," he muttered to himself, "just to see if she's okay." The digital clock read 2:55 when the bell rang. Children began to pour out of the gates in small, noisy groups. Parents waited on the sidewalks, some chatting amongst themselves, others absorbed in their phones. Dawson watched intently, searching for the familiar blonde hair. That's when he saw her, leaving alone, head down, clutching her backpack to her chest like a shield. Without thinking too much, he honked lightly. Maisie stopped, looked around, confused. When her eyes found the familiar car, her face transformed instantly. A smile lit up her features as she ran towards him. "You came back!" she exclaimed as Dawson lowered the window, the surprise and joy evident in her voice. "I was just passing by," Dawson lied, trying to sound casual. "Coincidence. What a nice coincidence," she replied, with a tone that made it clear she didn't believe him for a second. "Are you going to give me a ride again?" "If you want." Maisie didn't need a second invitation. She opened the door and slid into the passenger seat with the naturalness of someone who did this every day, not just once in her life. She placed her backpack on her lap and buckled her seatbelt without needing instructions. "How was your day?" Dawson asked, surprising himself with his genuine interest. "Normal. We had a math test. I think I did well. I like numbers." "Me too," he replied, driving slowly. "They're precise. Reliable." During the ride, Maisie talked about her teacher, a book she was reading from the library, and how much she loved making up stories before bed. "I make up a lot in my head," she explained. "My teacher says I should write them down so I don't forget. But school notebooks are for homework." When they reached the housing complex where Maisie lived, a block of worn-down buildings with peeling paint, she unbuckled her seatbelt, but didn't get out right away. Her small fingers played with the strap of her backpack, and she seemed to be gathering courage for something. "Are you going to pass by coincidentally on Monday too?" she finally asked, looking at her own hands. Dawson hesitated. The sensible answer was no. He had a busy life, important commitments, a demanding career. There was no room for random drives with a child he barely knew. "Maybe," he replied, against every logical argument in his head. The smile he received in return made all those arguments seem irrelevant. The weekend dragged on in an unprecedented way. Dawson tried to work, but he couldn't concentrate. He tried to watch a game, but turned off the TV in the third quarter. He went for a run, went to the gym, organized his files, anything to avoid thinking about the little girl with blue eyes who, somehow inexplicably, had managed to penetrate his carefully constructed armor. On Monday, he rearranged his entire schedule. "Personal matters," he told his secretary, who looked at him as if he had just announced his retirement. He arrived at the school 10 minutes before the bell, parking in the same spot as Friday. When the bell rang, he noticed that Maisie was one of the first to come out, her eyes eagerly searching for the car. When she saw it, her face lit up. "You really came," she exclaimed as she got in, almost jumping with excitement. "I knew you would." "Another coincidence," Dawson said, fighting back a smile. Maisie laughed, a light musical sound. "The best coincidence in the world." Over the next week, Dawson continued to show up, by coincidence. The conversations in the car grew longer, with him purposefully taking alternative routes, driving slowly, making the trip last as long as possible. Gradually, Maisie began to reveal more about her life. Like small puzzle pieces, Dawson began to assemble a picture of a reality very different from his own. "My mum works 2 jobs," she explained on a rainy Thursday, as raindrops streamed down the window of the warm car. "In the morning, she cleans offices downtown, and at night she works as a waitress in a diner. Sometimes she comes home so tired she falls asleep in her work clothes." "And you're alone at night?" Dawson asked, unable to hide the concern in his voice. "Mrs. Martinez from 302 keeps an eye on me until 9. Then I lock the door and go to sleep." "I'm not scared." There was something in the way she said it. A forced maturity, an independence that no 9-year-old should have to possess, that tugged at Dawson's heart. "And your dad?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Maisie shrugged, looking out at the rain. "I never met him. Mum says he left before I was born. She has a picture of him, but she keeps it in her drawer. I saw it once, hidden." Her small fingers fidgeted with her backpack strap, a habit Dawson had noticed she had when she was nervous. "She says I have his eyes," she added in a low voice, "blue like the sky." Dawson didn't know what to say. In his orderly, pragmatic world, problems had practical solutions. Documents, legal arguments, settlements. But how could he fix the absence he saw reflected in Maisie's eyes? The weeks went by, and the coincidences turned into a routine that they both eagerly awaited. Dawson now rearranged even important meetings to be at the school gate at 3 o'clock sharp. At the office, people noticed the change. Dawson, always the first to arrive and the last to leave, now had set hours. He declined commitments after 2 in the afternoon. He smiled occasionally. Once, his secretary caught him doodling what looked like a little star in the margin of an important contract. "You seem different," commented Martin, his partner, during a business lunch. "More relaxed? Do I?" "Met someone?" Dawson hesitated, swirling the water in his glass. "Yes, someone special." Martin didn't press, naturally assuming it was a new girlfriend. Dawson didn't correct the impression. How could he explain that the person changing his life was a 9-year-old girl with sad eyes and an easy smile? How could he explain that he looked forward to those 20 daily minutes of conversation in the car more than anything else in his week? One day, when he picked her up, he noticed something different. Maisie came out chatting excitedly with 2 other girls who looked curiously at the sleek car parked across the street. "Bye, Lily." "Bye, Rebecca," she called out before running to Dawson. "Made some new friends?" he asked as she got in, automatically fastening her seatbelt. Maisie nodded, settling her backpack on her lap. "They invited me to Lily's birthday party on Saturday. There's going to be a pool and everything." "That's great," Dawson replied, genuinely happy for her. Maisie looked out the window for a moment, thoughtful, a small smile playing on her lips. "They're nice now," she said suddenly. "They weren't very nice before." "What changed?" She twirled a lock of blonde hair around her finger, as she did when she was a little embarrassed. Now nobody makes fun of me anymore. They think you're my dad. Dawson almost slammed on the brakes. A mix of emotions washed over him, surprise, panic, and a strange satisfaction he couldn't explain. I didn't tell them that, Maisie added quickly, noticing his reaction. They just thought it on their own. Because you always pick me up in this cool car and wear important lawyer clothes. And you didn't correct them, Dawson observed, unable to hide a slight tone of amusement. Maisie bit her lip, her expression a mix of guilt and hope. Did I do wrong? Dawson thought for a moment. He should feel uncomfortable, maybe even annoyed. But surprisingly, he wasn't. No, he replied after a moment. You didn't do wrong. The relief on her face was immediate, followed by a smile that lit up the whole car. Then a comfortable silence settled between them, broken only by the soft sound of an old song on the radio. Do you have any kids? Maisie asked suddenly, breaking the silence. No. A wife? Dawson shook his head, turning onto a familiar street. No, I'm alone. Maisie studied him with those piercing blue eyes, too wise for her age. But you don't seem alone when you're with me. The simplicity of the observation hit him like a revelation. It was true. For the first time in years, perhaps for the first time in his adult life, he didn't feel alone. In the days that followed, Dawson realized how much his life was changing. Clients noticed he was less rigid in negotiations, more open to compromise. His secretary commented that he hadn't worked last weekend, a first in 7 years. His apartment, once a showcase of minimalist design, now had a colorful drawing of a flower stuck to the fridge, a gift from Maisie when she discovered that his house didn't even have any color. He also noticed changes in Maisie. She smiled more, spoke with more confidence. She no longer lowered her head when leaving school. She had friends now, small victories that he celebrated silently. On a Friday, while driving to the school, he passed a bookstore. He remembered how Maisie had mentioned loving to write stories but had nowhere to keep them. Without much thought, he parked and went inside. He came out 15 minutes later with a package wrapped in colorful paper with little silver stars. All the way to the school, he felt an almost childish anxiety, imagining Maisie's reaction. When she got into the car, she immediately noticed the package on the back seat. "What's that?" she asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Something you mentioned wanting," Dawson replied, trying to sound casual. "A little gift. For me?" "Really?" The surprise in her voice made Dawson realize that gifts were not common in her life. "Of course, you can open it?" Maisie took the package reverently, as if it were something extremely fragile. She unwrapped it carefully, trying not to tear the paper. Another telling sign of a child who didn't receive many gifts. When she finally opened the box, her eyes widened. Inside was a hardcover journal in a sky blue color, with small silver butterflies embossed on it, and a tiny golden lock on the side. Alongside it was a case of colorful pens. "A diary!" she exclaimed, running her fingers over the soft cover. "A diary all for me." "For your stories," Dawson explained, surprised by the warmth he felt in his chest seeing her reaction. "I thought you'd like a special place to keep them." "It's the prettiest one I've ever seen," Maisie said, opening it carefully to reveal the blank pages. "Look, it even has a little key. To keep your secrets safe." Maisie looked at him, her eyes shining in a way that made Dawson's heart race. A mix of gratitude and something deeper he couldn't name. "No one has ever given me a gift like this," she said softly. "Well, you deserve it. Can I give you a hug?" Without waiting for an answer, Maisie unbuckled her seatbelt and threw herself at him, hugging him with all the strength her little arms could muster. Dawson, initially stiff from the unexpected contact, slowly relaxed and returned the hug. "Thank you, Dawson," she whispered against his shoulder. "You're the best coincidence that ever happened to me." Something warm and unfamiliar coursed through Dawson's body. An emotion he hadn't felt in so long, he had almost forgotten what it was like. When Maisie returned to her seat, her eyes were still shining with emotion. She held the diary against her chest like a treasure. "I'm going to write every day," she promised solemnly, "starting with our story." At that moment, Something solidified inside Dawson, a certainty that these daily coincidences were no longer enough. He wanted to do more for Maisie. He wanted to see that smile more often. "You know," he said, helping her buckle her seatbelt again, "I was thinking, maybe tomorrow, if your mum allows it, we could go get a snack somewhere nice, and then you could start writing your stories in the new diary." Maisie's face lit up as if someone had turned on all the Christmas lights at once. "Really? Just the two of us? Just the two of us? Like a special day?" Dawson smiled, a genuine smile that was becoming more and more frequent on his normally serious face. "Exactly. A special day. My mom will let me," Maisie stated with certainty. "She works tomorrow, but Mrs. Martinez can say it's okay." As he drove the last few blocks to the housing complex, watching the pure joy on Maisie's face as she admired her new diary, Dawson realized that for the first time in years, he was looking forward to the weekend. For the first time, he had something more important than contracts and meetings. He had someone to care for. Saturday dawned with a perfect blue sky, as if the weather itself was celebrating the special day to come. Dawson woke up earlier than usual, even though it was his day off. A strange feeling accompanied him, a mix of anxiety and anticipation that he hadn't felt since, well, he couldn't remember the last time. He changed his clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple blue shirt. It felt strange not to wear a suit, as if he was somehow incomplete, but he sensed that Maisie would feel more at ease if he didn't look so much like the important lawyer she called him. At 10:30, he parked in front of the Parkview Apartments. The complex looked even more worn in the daylight, peeling paint, rusty railings, a small battered playground with only one working swing. Children ran around the central courtyard, enjoying the sunny Saturday. Dawson consulted the piece of paper where he had written down the apartment number Maisie had given him the day before. Building C, apartment 214. He walked up the stairs, noticing the clean hallways despite the evident poverty of the place. Someone was trying hard to maintain what dignity was possible. He stopped in front of the door and took a deep breath before knocking. He heard quick, light footsteps on the other side, followed by Maisie's excited voice. "It's him, Mrs. Martinez." "It's Dawson." The door opened to reveal a middle-aged woman with graying hair and a cautious expression. Behind her, Maisie was jumping with excitement, wearing a simple dress that was clearly chosen with care for the occasion. "You must be the famous Dawson," the woman said, looking him up and down. "Maisie hasn't talked about anything else for weeks." "A pleasure to meet you," he replied, formally extending his hand. Mrs. Martinez shook his hand with surprising firmness. "Elena had to work today. She asked me to tell you that Maisie needs to be back by 5, and that she has my number on her phone, just in case." The implicit message was clear. "We're watching you." "So of course, I'll have her back on time," Dawson assured her. Maisie shot past Mrs. Martinez like a lightning bolt, carrying a small purple purse. "I'm ready. I brought my new diary to write in later." "Behave yourself, young lady," Mrs. Martinez warned, but with an affectionate smile. Then, lowering her voice to Dawson, she was so excited she barely slept. "Take good care of her." "I promise," he replied seriously. On the way to the car, Maisie bounced alongside Dawson, talking non-stop. "Where are we going? Can we go to the park? There's a carousel there and swings. And Mrs. Martinez let me bring $5 from my piggy bank to buy ice cream." Dawson smiled, opening the car door for her. "I have better plans than that. And save your money. Today's on me." Maisie's eyes widened. "On you. Everything. Everything." She got into the car with a smile so big that Dawson felt something tighten in his chest. When was the last time someone had been so genuinely happy in his presence? "First," he announced, starting the engine, "we're having lunch. I know a place with the best burgers in the city." "Burgers?" Maisie nearly shouted with excitement. "With fries and a milkshake, if you want." She leaned back in her seat, looking at him with pure admiration. This is going to be the best day ever. The Burger Palace wasn't the kind of establishment Dawson usually frequented. His meals typically took place in fine dining restaurants with clients or alone in his apartment. But the place had a legendary reputation in the city, and the line out the door confirmed it. "There are a lot of people," Maisie observed, holding Dawson's hand as they approached. "Are we going to wait long?" "Actually," he replied with a conspiratorial smile, "I made a reservation." Her eyes widened. "You can do that at burger joints. When you know the owner, you can." Robert, the owner, was a former client Dawson had helped with legal trouble years ago. When they entered, he greeted them personally, guiding them to a corner table by the window, decorated with a small vase of flowers. "Your special table, Mr. Parker," Robert said with a wink to Maisie. "And who is this young lady?" "Maisie," she replied, extending her hand as she'd seen Dawson do earlier. "Pleasure to meet you," Robert laughed, charmed by her formality. "The pleasure is all mine, Maisie. Any friend of Mr. Parker's deserves our best treatment." After Robert left, Maisie whispered, "He calls you Mr. You must be really important." "Not that important," Dawson replied, feeling strangely uncomfortable with her admiration. "I just helped him with some paperwork once." When the burgers arrived, huge, juicy, accompanied by mountains of fries and milkshakes in tall glasses, Maisie's eyes looked like they were going to pop out of their sockets. "This is the biggest burger I've ever seen in my life," she exclaimed, looking at the sandwich that was almost the size of her face. "So I think you can eat it all," Dawson teased. Maisie narrowed her eyes, accepting the challenge. "Of course I can. I'm stronger than I look." Dawson laughed, a sound that even he recognized as rare. "I have no doubt about that." They ate amidst conversation and laughter. Maisie told him about her school, a book she was reading from the library, and how she wanted to learn to ride a bike one day. Dawson listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at her innocent jokes. At one point, he realized he was talking about his own childhood, something he rarely mentioned to anyone. He told her about how he loved building model airplanes as a boy, about his dog Max who would run away whenever the door was left open, about the tree in his backyard where he had built a treehouse. "You had a treehouse?" Maisie asked, impressed. "That's so cool. What was it like?" "Nothing too fancy, just a few nailed-together boards and a makeshift roof. But to me, it was a castle." "Do you still have it?" Dawson shook his head. "No, that house was sold a long time ago." "Do you have pictures?" "I don't think so." Dawson hesitated, realizing he had practically no photos from his childhood, just as he had no photos in his current apartment. It was as if his life were only the present, with no past and no memories worth preserving. "We should take pictures today," Maisie suggested, licking ketchup off her finger. "So you don't forget." "That's a great idea," Dawson agreed, realizing that he really wanted that. A record of this day that somehow felt more significant than many others in his adult life. After lunch, they headed to Lincoln Park. The place was full of families enjoying the sunny Saturday. Children ran and shouted, parents chatted on benches, couples strolled hand in hand. "Let's go on the carousel first," Maisie pleaded, pulling Dawson by the hand. For the next few hours, Dawson found himself doing things he would never have imagined. Spinning on a decorated carousel, swinging on swings made for children, trying to hit targets at a carnival stall to win a teddy bear for Maisie. "You almost got it," she encouraged, jumping beside him. "Try again." On the fifth try, Dawson finally hit the center target, and the man at the stall handed Maisie a medium-sized blue teddy bear. "I'm going to name him Parker," she decided, hugging the bear, "like you." They took photos with Dawson's phone, making funny faces, posing with the new bear, eating blue cotton candy that stained their tongues. In every picture, Maisie's smile shone, and Dawson noticed he was smiling too, not the restrained professional smile he wore at work, but something genuine and relaxed. "This one's my favorite," Maisie said, looking at a photo where they were side by side on the swings, both with their feet in the air and expressions of pure joy. "You look happy in it." "I am happy," Dawson replied, surprised to realize it was true, not just amused or entertained, but genuinely happy, an almost forgotten feeling. They sat on a bench to rest, Maisie licking a strawberry ice cream cone while Dawson had a coffee. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon, signaling that their special day was coming to an end. This was the best day of my life," Maisie declared solemnly, hugging the Parker bear with one arm. "Thank you, Dawson." "Mine too," he admitted softly, surprising himself with the sincerity of the confession. Really? Better than winning big cases and all that lawyer stuff. Dawson thought about the moments he was supposed to consider the highlights of his career. Won cases, promotions, multi-million-dollar contracts. None of them had given him the kind of simple, pure joy he had felt today. Really, he confirmed, much better. Maisie smiled, satisfied. Can we do it again sometime? Of course we can. She finished her ice cream and wiped her hands on a napkin. It's almost time to go back. Mrs. Martinez said my mum gets home from work at 5:30. Then we'd better get going, Dawson agreed, standing up. I don't want to make your mum worry on our first outing. They started walking towards the park exit. Maisie went a little ahead, skipping and spinning, hugging her new bear, telling Dawson what she would write in her diary about the day. That's when it happened. During one of her spins, Maisie didn't see a small bump in the path. Her foot caught, and she fell forward, hitting the concrete hard. The cry of pain was instant. Dawson ran to her, his heart pounding with worry. Maisie, are you okay? She was sitting on the ground, tears streaming down her face, looking at her knee. Her jeans were torn, and blood was starting to seep from a nasty scrape. It hurts, she sobbed, her lower lip trembling. Without hesitation, Dawson knelt beside her. Let me see. He examined the wound carefully. It wasn't deep, but the knee was badly scraped and bleeding. It's going to be okay, he assured her, taking a clean handkerchief from his pocket. Let's clean this up. Gently, he dabbed away the blood as best he could. Maisie sobbed quietly, trying to be brave. I'm sorry for ruining our day, she mumbled through her tears. How you didn't ruin anything, Dawson replied firmly. Accidents happen. The important thing is that it's not serious. When he finished cleaning the wound, he noticed Maisie was still trembling a little from both the pain and the shock. Here's what we'll do, he said, pocketing the stained handkerchief. I'll carry you to the car. We can stop at a pharmacy for some bandages and then we'll go to your house, okay? She nodded, still sniffling. Dawson picked up the bear that had fallen on the ground, handed it to her, and then lifted her into his arms, careful not to hurt her knee. Maisie automatically put her arms around his neck, resting her head on his shoulder. You're strong, she commented softly. And you're brave, he replied. A lot of kids would be crying a lot more. I don't want to be a baby. Crying when you're hurt isn't being a baby. It's being human. On the way to the car, Maisie relaxed in his arms, her initial fear passing. Dawson felt the small, dainty, warm body against his, the implicit trust in the way she surrendered to his care. It was a strange feeling, protective, powerful, and at the same time extremely vulnerable. After a quick stop at the pharmacy, where Dawson bought not only bandages but also antiseptic, antibiotic ointment, and a pack of gummy candies to help with recovery, they arrived at the Parkview apartments at exactly 5 o'clock. Can you walk? He asked, parking the car. Maisie nodded. It doesn't hurt as much now, it just stings a little. Even so, Dawson carried her again to go up the stairs, also carrying the pharmacy bag and the bear. When they reached apartment 214, a surprise awaited them. The door was opened not by Mrs. Martinez, but by a young woman with a tired and suspicious expression. Mom, Maisie exclaimed. You're already home. The woman, Eleanor, looked from Maisie to Dawson, her dark brown eyes quickly assessing the situation. She was pretty, despite the deep dark circles under her eyes and her brown hair carelessly tied up. She couldn't be more than 30. What happened? She asked, her voice a mix of concern and suspicion. I fell at the park and scraped my knee, Maisie explained as Dawson carefully set her down. Dawson helped me and bought a bunch of medicine. And look, he won Parker for me. She held up the bear with pride. Elena watched Dawson intently, as if trying to see right through him. So you're the famous Dawson? Maisie hasn't talked about anything else for weeks. Dawson Parker. He introduced himself formally, extending his hand. I'm a lawyer. I met Maisie by chance and, well, we ended up becoming friends. Eleanor shook his hand briefly. Eleanor Miller, full-time mom and double-time employee. There was a hint of bitterness in her tone, quickly replaced by concern as she examined Maisie's knee. Let's take care of this, sweetie. I brought a few things that might help, Dawson offered, handing her the pharmacy bag. Elena seemed surprised by the contents. This is very kind. Thank you. It was my pleasure, he replied sincerely. Maisie is an amazing girl. Something in Elena's face softened a little. Yes, she is. Then, to Maisie, go wash that knee in the bathroom while I talk to Mr. Parker, okay? Maisie nodded, grabbed her bear and limped slightly down the hallway, not without giving Dawson one last smile. When they were alone, Eleanor crossed her arms, her defensive posture returning. Look, I'll be direct. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but Maisie is all I have. She's 9 years old, innocent, and too trusting. I understand your concern, Dawson replied calmly. I really didn't plan any of this. I met Maisie by chance and I can't explain it. She has something special. Elena studied him for a moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. I got pregnant at 17, she said finally, her voice low. Her father never wanted to be involved. He disappeared as soon as I told him. I had to drop out of high school, get jobs, raise her alone. I do what I can so she can get an education, have a better future than I did. Dawson nodded, touched by her raw honesty. It's not easy, Eleanor continued, rubbing her neck wearily. She needs things I can't give her, time, attention, outings, but I try my best every day. You're doing an incredible job, Dawson said sincerely. Maisie is polite, intelligent, kind. That comes from you. Elena smiled slightly, the first smile since she had opened the door. Thank you. She really likes you, you know. I've never seen her so excited about someone. At that moment, Dawson saw beyond the fatigue and initial suspicion. He saw a young woman carrying a huge weight alone, sacrificing everything for her daughter. He saw the loneliness in her eyes, similar to what he saw in Maisie's, and what he recognized in himself when he looked in the mirror. If you don't mind, he said, hesitating, I'd like to continue being Maisie's friend, maybe help out in some way, without overstepping any boundaries, of course. Elena studied him again, as if looking for some hidden motive. Finally, she nodded slightly. We'll see. One step at a time. It was more than Dawson had hoped for. Of course, I understand completely. Maisie came back from the bathroom, her knee clean but still red. Are you leaving already, Dawson? Yes, but I'll be back another day if your mum allows it. Maisie looked hopefully at Eleanor, who gave a small smile. We'll see. Now thank Mr. Parker for the day. Thank you for everything, Maisie said, hugging him impulsively. It was the best day ever. As he left the small apartment, Dawson felt something forming inside him, a desire to do more, to be more, to fill a void he had never clearly perceived until he met Maisie and now Eleanor. It was only when he reached his car that he realized that really had been the best day he could remember in a very, very long time. The weeks following the trip to the park brought a new routine to Dawson's life. What had started as occasional coincidences had turned into a commitment more important than any business meeting. Every day at 3 o'clock, his car would park near the school gate, and every day Maisie would run towards him, backpack swinging, her smile lighting up the way. At the law firm, people noticed the change. Dawson Parker, the workaholic who lived to win cases, now had a sacred time slot in his schedule. His secretary received explicit instructions. Nothing, absolutely nothing, could be scheduled after 2:30 p.m. Not even the multi-million-dollar petrochem case he had coveted for so long. Is everything all right, Parker? His partner Martin asked one afternoon, finding him packing up documents at 2:15. You've been leaving early every day. Never been better, Dawson replied with a tranquility that surprised them both. It was true. Something was changing in him, like ice melting after a long winter. The conversations with Maisie in the car, initially brief, now stretched on. Often, they would park at the park near the Parkview apartments and spend a whole hour talking, drawing, or making up stories before she had to go home. What's your favorite color? Maisie asked one afternoon, swinging her legs in the passenger seat. Blue, I think, Dawson answered. I've never really thought about it. Mine is yellow, she said with conviction, like the sun, or sunflowers, or those little gold stars the teacher gives you when you get a good grade. These simple questions, about favorite colors, favorite animals, what he wanted to be when he grew up, unearthed parts of Dawson he didn't even remember existed. When was the last time someone had cared about his personal preferences beyond his professional skills? Maisie waited for him every day, even when it rained. On stormy days, Dawson started arriving earlier, parking close to the entrance so she wouldn't get wet. He would bring an extra umbrella large enough for both of them and walk her to the car. A routine was established. On Tuesdays, they stopped at the public library where Maisie would exchange books and Dawson would help her with her homework. Thursdays were ice cream day, no matter the weather. "It's never too cold for ice cream," she would insist. On Saturdays, when Elena worked a half-day, Dawson would pick Maisie up for outings around the city. The diary he had given her was now almost full. Maisie wrote about everything, her day at school, made-up stories, dreams for the future. Sometimes she would read excerpts to Dawson, who listened with genuine interest. "This one is about a lawyer who is secretly a superhero," she explained one afternoon, showing him a colorful drawing next to the text. "He looks serious at work, but he saves people at night." Dawson smiled, seeing the figure in a blue suit and red cape, unmistakably based on him. "What's his superpower?" "He makes people feel special," Maisie answered simply. "Like you do with me." Those words, spoken with the disarming honesty of a child, touched Dawson more deeply than any professional compliment ever had. His apartment, once an impersonal and minimalist space, began to change. Colorful drawings adorned the refrigerator. A small vase with sunflowers, Maisie's favorite, appeared on the coffee table. Children's books shared shelf space with legal volumes. A photo of them at the park, both laughing while eating cotton candy, earned a prominent place on his bedside table. Even his wardrobe changed. Among the expensive suits and starched shirts, jeans, sneakers, and colorful t-shirts appeared. Clothes for Saturday outings, chosen to make Maisie feel more at ease. His priorities silently rearranged themselves. The next big case, the coveted full partnership at the firm, the larger apartment he planned to buy, all of it seemed less urgent now. In its place were new concerns. How to help Maisie with the upcoming science fair, whether she needed glasses due to the headaches she had mentioned, if he should talk to Eleanor about the swimming lessons Maisie so badly wanted. Maisie had become the center of his life, like a small sun around which he now orbited. And the most surprising thing was that, instead of feeling trapped or limited by this new responsibility, Dawson felt more alive than ever. At first, his encounters with Eleanor were brief and formal. Dawson would see her when he dropped Maisie off at home. They would exchange a few polite words, and he would leave. Eleanor maintained a cautious distance, her eyes always watchful, assessing the intentions of this man who had unexpectedly entered her daughter's life. "She got an A on her math test," Elena commented in one of these quick chats. "She said you helped her with fractions." "She's very smart," Dawson replied. "She just needed a little confidence." Elena nodded, a small smile softening her always tense features. "Thank you for that." As the weeks passed, something changed. The formal thank yous evolved into short conversations, which then became longer. Sometimes, when he dropped Maisie off, Eleanor would invite him in for coffee. "Just 5 minutes," she would say. But the 5 minutes would turn into half an hour, then an hour. One Saturday, when Dawson brought Maisie back after a trip to the Science Museum, he found Elena looking especially tired. Maisie ran off to take a shower, leaving them alone in the small living room. "Are you okay?" he asked. Eleanor sighed, rubbing her sore neck. "Double shift yesterday. And the heat in the diner. Sometimes it feels like I'm melting." Without much thought, Dawson offered, "I can pick something up for your dinner. There must be some decent takeout around here." She hesitated, pride wrestling with exhaustion. "You don't have to bother." "Oh, it's no bother," he insisted. "I'm hungry too. We could have dinner together if you don't mind my company." That's how the Saturday dinners began. Once a week, Dawson would bring food, pizza, Chinese, burgers, and they would eat together at the small kitchen table. Maisie would dominate the conversation at first, talking about her day's adventure, while the adults listened and laughed. After a few weeks, a new pattern emerged. After dinner, Maisie would go to her room to read or draw, leaving Dawson and Eleanor talking in the living room for another hour or two. The conversations, initially centered on Maisie, gradually expanded. They talked about his work, her 2 jobs, the city, books, movies. Eleanor revealed that she liked to paint in her rare spare moments, showing him a few small canvases hidden in her room. Dawson told her about his forgotten passion for photography, abandoned when his legal career took center stage. On one of those nights, as rain pattered against the windows, creating an atmosphere of intimacy, Elena asked an unexpected question. "Why are you alone, Dawson? A successful, attractive man. You must have women lining up." He smiled wryly, swirling the cheap wine they were sharing in a glass. "Trust me, that's not the case." "Never wanted to get married?" Dawson was silent for a moment, considering how to answer. "Actually, I was engaged once. 6 years ago." Eleanor raised her eyebrows, surprised. "What happened?" "She was with me for the status, not for me," he replied, the old pain still faintly present in his voice. "I found out she was having an affair with my partner at the time. They had been together for almost a year, planning how they would split my assets after the wedding." "That's horrible," Elena said, genuinely shocked. "It was educational," Dawson replied with a humorless smile. "I learned to keep relationships professional, not personal. Until I met Maisie, of course." He expected to see pity in Elena's eyes, but he found only understanding. "I get it more than you know." "Maisie's father," he ventured. Elena nodded, her gaze distant. "We dated in high school. When I got pregnant, I thought we would stay together, build a family. He disappeared the next day. Blocked my number, switched schools, just vanished. I'm sorry. I was young and naive," she continued, her voice low so Maisie wouldn't hear from her room. "I thought my world would end. My parents kicked me out. I had to drop out of school, find jobs. It was hard." "You were very brave," Dawson said sincerely. "I didn't have a choice," Elena replied with a shrug. "When you have someone depending on you, you find strength you never knew you had." They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of the rain filling the space between them. "I gave up on love after that," Elena confessed finally. "I decided it was a luxury I couldn't afford. All that mattered was Maisie, giving her what I never had." "And you've done an amazing job," Dawson assured her. "She's extraordinary." "Thank you," Elena smiled, a tired but genuine smile. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have a normal life. Go on dates, go to the movies, take a walk without constantly worrying about money and time. It's never too late for that." She let out a light, humorless laugh. "With 2 jobs and a daughter, it's not that simple." "Nothing worthwhile is ever simple," Dawson replied, surprising himself with the depth of that thought. In the following weeks, these conversations deepened. They shared fears, abandoned dreams, small victories, and big disappointments. They talked about their parents, his, distant and focused on appearances, hers, religious and inflexible. They discussed books they had read, movies they wanted to see, places they dreamed of visiting. One night, Elena confessed, "You know what's strange? I tell you things I've never told anyone, not even my therapist, back when I could afford a few sessions." "Maybe it's because we didn't meet under normal circumstances," Dawson suggested. "We don't have to pretend to be someone we're not." "Or maybe it's because you actually listen," she replied, looking him in the eyes. "You're not just waiting for your turn to talk." There was something new between them, a silent understanding, a connection based not on physical attraction, though that existed, unspoken but present, but on mutual recognition. 2 wounded adults, each in their own way, who found in Maisie an unexpected point of contact and, through her, a path to each other. One night, after Maisie had fallen asleep, Eleanor asked what she had been thinking for weeks. "Why do you do all this, Dawson? The outings, the gifts, the time. What do you get out of it?" The question could have sounded offensive, but it wasn't. It was genuine curiosity, perhaps even a need to understand something that seemed too good to be true. Dawson thought for a moment, searching for the most honest answer. "Before I met Maisie, I just existed. I worked, slept, ate, repeated. I had professional success, money, respect. And an emptiness I didn't even realize was there until she filled it. Elena nodded, understanding perfectly. She gave me something I didn't know I needed, he continued. Purpose. Simple joy. The chance to be important to someone not for what I can do, but simply for who I am. And for what you do too, Elena added softly. You've changed her life, you know. Before you, she was so shy, so insecure. Now she's confident, happy. Even her grades have improved. She changed mine too, Dawson admitted, more than I can explain. That night, when they said goodbye at the door, there was a moment of hesitation, a space of unsaid possibilities, of unspoken words. Eleanor extended her hand for a formal shake, as they always did, but Dawson, following an impulse, pulled her into a hug. For a second, she tensed, surprised. Then, slowly, she relaxed, returning the embrace. They stood like that for a few moments, not as lovers, but as two survivors finding comfort in each other after a long, lonely journey. When Dawson returned to his apartment that night, he realized something important. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. Even though he was physically by himself, he carried within him a sense of belonging. Maisie and Elena had become his chosen family, a silent but powerful bond that anchored him to the world in a way he had never experienced before. And although none of the three had the courage to name what was happening, something new was growing between them, something that had the potential to heal old wounds and create new possibilities. Autumn arrived, painting the city's trees in shades of red and gold. 3 months had passed since the day in the park when Dawson had met Elena. What began as occasional visits had turned into a constant presence. Without anyone noticing exactly when, Dawson had become part of the daily routine of the small apartment in the Parkview complex. On Monday to Friday mornings, he would show up at 7:15, bringing coffee and fresh bagels. "Said I was just passing by the bakery," he'd always say, even though the bakery was completely out of his way to the office. Maisie would already be waiting, in her immaculate school uniform, her blonde hair neatly combed. "Brought your favorite," he would announce, handing her a hot chocolate while Elena drank her coffee, rushing so as not to be late for work. "Are you picking me up today?" Maisie would ask every day, even though she knew the answer. "I'll be there at 3 o'clock sharp," Dawson would guarantee, adjusting the tie that Maisie insisted on straightening even when it was already perfectly aligned. In the afternoon, after school, the routine continued. Faye snack, homework at the kitchen table, then games or reading until Elena arrived from her first job. On the days she had a double shift, Dawson would make dinner, or rather, try to make it. His culinary skills were limited, but they improved with each disastrous attempt that made Maisie laugh until she was breathless. "I don't think spaghetti is supposed to be so stuck together like that," she commented once, observing the pasta that looked more like an abstract sculpture. "It's a new recipe," Dawson defended himself with feigned dignity. "Architectural spaghetti." They laughed and ordered pizza, as they always did when his culinary experiments went wrong. These small routines, these simple moments of togetherness, were building something none of them had planned. Gradually, small changes appeared in the apartment. The old TV that was always on the fritz was replaced by a new one. It was on sale, Dawson justified when Elena questioned it. The always empty refrigerator was now kept stocked. The leaky faucet in the bathroom, which the landlord had been ignoring for months, was fixed on a rainy Saturday when Dawson showed up with a toolbox and a determination to solve the problem. "I didn't know lawyers knew how to use wrenches," Elena teased, watching him struggle with the pipes. "We have many hidden talents," he replied, with water dripping on his face. "Unfortunately, plumbing isn't one of them." They ended up calling a professional, but the gesture did not go unnoticed. Just as the paid bills Elena would occasionally find did not go unnoticed, the overdue school fee, the health insurance plan they had almost cancelled, the past due electricity bill. "So I can't accept this," she said the first time, trying to give the money back. "It's not charity," Dawson replied simply. "It's family." The word hung between them, unquestioned, uncontested, as if it were natural, as if it had always been this way. Saturday nights, previously reserved only for dinner, expanded into movie sessions in the small living room. They would sit on the cramped sofa, Maisie in the middle, with the right to choose the movie, Dawson and Eleanor on the ends, exchanging glances over the girl's head when she laughed or got scared by a scene. One night, during an animated movie about a family of superheroes, Maisie fell asleep on Dawson's lap. He remained still, afraid of waking her, watching her serene little face, her long eyelashes against her cheeks, her peaceful breathing. "I can take her to bed," Elena whispered. "Let her stay here a little longer," he replied, his voice as low as hers. "I don't mind." Elena watched him, this man in an expensive suit with a sleeping child on his lap, looking perfectly comfortable, as if it were the most natural place in the world for him to be. Something about that image touched her heart deeply. "You're good for her," she said simply. "She's good for me," he replied, his eyes meeting hers in the dim light of the television. "You both are." After that, it became common for Maisie to fall asleep during movies and be carried to bed by Dawson. He learned the ritual, pulling back the blanket, tucking her in carefully, placing the Parker bear, which now wore a small suit made by Elena, beside her, turning on the moon-shaped nightlight, and leaving the door ajar, enough for the hallway light to get in, but not so much that it scares her, as Maisie had explained. It was as if he had always been part of this routine, as if the space had been reserved for him all along, just waiting for him to occupy it. At work, the changes in Dawson did not go unnoticed. The case-obsessed lawyer who lived to win in court now refused weekend commitments and left promptly at 2:30, no matter how important the meeting. "So what's happened to you, Parker?" Martin asked one afternoon, finding him packing up documents before leaving. "You turned down the Ellison case. It was a guaranteed full partnership." "I have different priorities now," Dawson replied simply. Martin studied him for a moment. "Is it that mysterious woman? She must be someone special to change you like this." Dawson smiled, thinking of Maisie and Elena. "Actually, there are two of them." The confusion on Martin's face made him laugh as he left. How could he explain that he had found a family? How could he explain that professional success, which once meant everything, now seemed empty compared to the joy of hearing Maisie talk about her day or seeing Eleanor finally relax after an exhausting week? Dawson's apartment, once his sanctuary, now seemed just a place to sleep. He spent less and less time there, preferring the small, cozy home of Elena and Maisie, with its scattered books, toys on the floor, and the smell of dinner on the stove. One morning, while opening a cabinet to find an extra mug, Elena found a small collection of items that belonged to Dawson: a change of clothes, a toothbrush, a bedside book. She didn't comment, just rearranged the space to better accommodate his things. Likewise, in Dawson's apartment, traces of them appeared: a forgotten jacket of Maisie's hanging on the coat rack, Elena's hair products in the bathroom, colorful drawings on the fridge. It was as if their physical spaces reflected the intertwining of their lives. The transitions were so natural, so organic, that no one needed to talk about them. No one needed to name what was happening. It was like a silent dance, with all three participants moving in perfect harmony, without the need for instructions. On a rainy Wednesday, Dawson picked Maisie up from school as usual. In the car, she was unusually quiet, fiddling with the strap of her backpack. "Everything okay?" he asked, concerned. "Did something happen at school?" "No," she replied, biting her lip. "It's just that there's something tomorrow." "What thing?" "Career day," Maisie explained. "Once each kid brings a grown-up to talk about their job." "Will your mum be able to go?" Dawson asked, already knowing the answer. Elena couldn't get time off on such short notice. Maisie shook her head. "She's working, and the teacher said we can bring any important adult. It doesn't have to be a mum or dad." She looked at him hopefully. Dawson felt his heart race. "Care, would you like me to go?" Maisie nodded vigorously. "You can talk about being a lawyer and wear that blue suit that looks like a superhero's." Dawson laughed. "It would be an honor. What time?" 9 in the morning, and..." She hesitated, opening her backpack and taking out a folded piece of paper. "I made this in art class. It's for the family mural." She carefully unfolded the paper, revealing a colorful drawing. 3 smiling stick figures held hands, a woman with brown hair, a blonde girl in the middle, and a tall man in a blue suit. Above them, in colorful, slightly crooked letters, was written, "Mom, me and Dad and my family with love." Dawson looked at the drawing, feeling something warm and expansive grow in his chest. His vision blurred slightly. "The teacher is going to hang it in the hallway," Maisie explained, watching his reaction carefully. "Is it okay that I called you?" "That's more than okay," Dawson replied, his voice slightly hoarse. "It's the most beautiful drawing I've ever seen." Maisie smiled, relieved. "I thought maybe you wouldn't like it." "Why wouldn't I like it?" "Because," she hesitated, searching for the words, "because it's not real." "Not yet." Those simple words, "not yet," echoed in Dawson's mind for the rest of the day. Not yet. As if it were only a matter of time, as if fate had already been decided, just waiting for them to accept it. That night, after Maisie had fallen asleep, Dawson and Elena sat on the small apartment balcony. The rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh and clean. They shared a bottle of cheap wine in coffee mugs, talking in low voices under the starry sky. "She showed me the drawing," Elena commented, looking at Dawson. "What did you think?" "Honestly, it was the best moment of my day," he admitted. "Maybe of my life." Elena smiled, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "She adores you, you know. I've never seen Maisie connect with someone like this. The feeling is mutual." They sat in silence for a moment, just enjoying the night and each other's presence. There was a peace in those shared moments that Dawson had never found anywhere else. "So you're going tomorrow, career day?" Elena asked. "Of course." "I've already picked out my superhero suit," he replied with a smile. "I hope I don't disappoint her." "You could never disappoint her," Elena said softly. "Or me." Something in the way she said it, the vulnerability in her voice, the sincerity in her eyes gave Dawson the courage he had been gathering for weeks. It was time. He knew it with a certainty he had never felt before. He placed his mug on the small table between them and turned to face her completely. "Elena," he began, his voice firmer than he expected. "I need to tell you something." She nodded, waiting. "So over the past few months, I've grown attached to you both in a way I never thought possible," he continued, the words flowing naturally. "You've changed everything in my life. Before I met Maisie that day at the school, I was just existing. I worked, ate, slept. I wasn't really living." Elena watched him attentively, her eyes never leaving his. "After my fiancé. After that betrayal, I promised myself I would never love anyone again, that it was safer to be alone," Dawson confessed. "But you two, you showed me that it's possible, that it's worth the risk again." He took a deep breath, gathering courage for the next words. "I've fallen in love with you both, with the family you are. And if you'll have me, I want to be a part of this family permanently." His voice trembled slightly on the last word. "I already love you. I want to be Maisie's father, for real. I want to be with you every day, not just as a visitor, but as a partner, a companion. Family," he finished, feeling simultaneously light and vulnerable, as if he had just jumped off a cliff without knowing what awaited him below. Elena was silent for a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity. Then, to Dawson's surprise, her eyes filled with tears. "Tired for so long," she said finally, her voice choked with emotion. "I thought it would always be just the two of us, that this kind of happiness wasn't for people like me, who had made mistakes, who had too many responsibilities." She reached out her hand, touching his face gently. "Then you showed up, and at first it seemed too good to be true. I kept waiting for you to get tired, to realize we were too complicated, that we weren't worth the effort." She smiled through her tears. "But you never left." Dawson covered her hand with his. "And I never will, if you'll have me." Eleanor closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the promise. When she opened them again, there was a quiet certainty in them. "We love you too," she said simply. "I think we have for a while now." Dawson felt as if all the air had been sucked from his lungs. The simplicity of the declaration, the naturalness with which it was said, as if it were obvious, as if it had always been true. Slowly, as if afraid to break the moment, he leaned forward. Eleanor met him halfway, their lips touching in a gentle, almost reverent kiss. There was no urgency, only recognition of everything they had built together, of everything that was yet to come. When they parted, Dawson rested his forehead against hers. "Can we tell Maisie tomorrow?" Eleanor smiled. "I think she already knows. She probably knew before we did." They laughed quietly, aware of the little girl sleeping inside the apartment, the child who, unknowingly, had brought two lonely souls together and created a family where none had existed before. That night, when they finally said goodbye at the door, Dawson would still go back to his apartment. Some things needed time. There was a new certainty between them. What had begun as casual encounters had transformed into a comfortable routine and now solidified into something permanent, something real. Family, not by birth, but by choice, not by obligation, but by love. And as he drove home that night, Dawson knew that the small apartment in the Parkview complex, with its worn furniture and peeling walls, was more of a home to him than any other place had ever been. Because home isn't a place. Home is where the heart finds peace. And his heart, finally, had found its own. The weeks following the night on the balcony brought a new lightness to everyone. It was as if a silent decision had been made, a truth finally accepted. There was no longer a need for justifications or explanations when Dawson showed up every morning or stayed late almost every night. There was no more hesitation when Maisie called him Dad in front of other people, nor when Elena intertwined her fingers with his while they watched television. They had become a family, not on paper, yet, but in all the ways that truly mattered. On a sunny spring Saturday, Dawson invited them for a special outing. "So I have something to show you," he said, a mysterious twinkle in his eye. "Is it a surprise?" asked Maisie, jumping with excitement. "Something like that," he replied, exchanging a knowing look with Elena. They drove for about 20 minutes, leaving the familiar neighborhood behind, heading towards a leafy residential area with elegant houses and well-kept gardens. Eleanor looked out the window, curious but silent. Maisie pointed at everything she saw: a big dog, a house with fountains in the garden, a child riding a bicycle. Finally, Dawson parked in front of a 2-story house with a brick facade and large windows. It wasn't ostentatiously luxurious, but it radiated comfort and solidity. "So we're here," he announced, turning off the engine. "Is this someone we know's house?" Maisie asked, looking out the window. "In a way," Dawson replied, getting out of the car and opening the door for Eleanor, who was staring at him with a silent question in her eyes. He just smiled, taking a set of keys from his pocket. He opened the small gate that led to a stone path to the front door. Maisie ran ahead, while Eleanor walked slowly beside Dawson. "Dawson," she began, uncertainly. "Wait," he asked gently. "I want to show you something first." At the door, Dawson unlocked the lock and made way for them to enter. The interior was spacious and bright, with hardwood floors and light-colored walls. The furniture was minimal, just the essentials, as if waiting for more. "Whose house is this?" asked Maisie, spinning in the foyer, looking up at the high ceiling. Dawson knelt in front of her, getting to her level. "For now, it's mine. But I was thinking it could be ours." Maisie's eyes widened. "Ours? Like, for real ours?" "Yes," he confirmed, looking from Maisie to Eleanor, who remained motionless by the door. "I bought it 2 weeks ago. It has 4 bedrooms, a backyard with space for a swing set, and it's 10 minutes from your school." "What about our apartment?" asked Maisie, frowning. "Well, that's the important part," Dawson replied, standing up and walking over to Elena. He took her hands in his, looking her in the eyes. "Elena, I know this is a big step, but I want you and Maisie to come live with me, here, so we can truly start our life together." Elena looked around, taking in the grandness of the gesture. It wasn't just an invitation to share a space. It was an invitation to a new life. "We don't have to decide now," he added quickly, noticing her hesitation. "It's a big decision, and I want you to be sure." "Can we see the rest of the house?" asked Maisie, bouncing impatiently. Dawson smiled. Of course. Let's start upstairs. He led them through the house, showing them each room. The master bedroom, large and with a view of the garden. An office that could easily be converted into a studio for Elena and her paintings. A guest room. And then, the room that made Maisie's eyes sparkle. Matt, this would be your room, Dawson explained, opening the door to a sunny space with walls in a soft shade of yellow, Maisie's favorite color. It's yellow, she exclaimed, running to the bay window which had a cushioned seat perfect for reading. And it has a reading nook. I thought you could put your book collection here, Dawson said, pointing to the empty shelves. And there's enough space for a desk for homework and your drawings. Maisie twirled around the room, touching the walls, looking at the ceiling, her face lit up with possibility. Can we live here, Mum? Please. Eleanor, who had been silent throughout the tour, finally spoke. We need to talk about it, sweetie. Here it's a big decision. Why don't we explore the backyard? Dawson suggested, sensing Eleanor's need to process everything. There's a perfect tree for a treehouse. A treehouse? Maisie's excitement couldn't be contained. Like the one you had when you were little? Exactly, he confirmed, smiling as he watched her run down the stairs. In the backyard, while Maisie examined the tree and planned aloud where she would put each part of the future house, Dawson and Eleanor sat on a bench in the shade. It's too much, isn't it? He asked, looking at her profile. Eleanor sighed. It's perfect, and a little scary. Why? Because... She hesitated, searching for the words. Because it's always been just the two of us, fighting for everything, living in places that were never really ours, working jobs that barely paid the bills. And now this. She gestured to the house. It feels like a dream, and I'm afraid I'll wake up. Dawson took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. It's not a dream, Eleanor. It's real. And you both deserve this. You deserve stability, comfort, and space to grow. I don't want you to think I'm with you for this, she said, indicating the house with a nod. I know you're not, he replied firmly. I met you when you lived in an apartment with leaky pipes and worked 2 jobs. If I wanted someone interested in money, I wouldn't have chosen a woman who refused my financial help for weeks. That drew a small smile from her. I was stubborn, wasn't I? Gloriously stubborn, he agreed, kissing her forehead. It's one of the things I love about you. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Maisie try to climb the tree trunk, determined to reach the first branch. We don't have to decide today, Dawson repeated. The house is ours whenever we're ready. Eleanor turned to him, her eyes moist but determined. We're ready. Are you sure? She nodded. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The move happened 2 weeks later, on a sunny Saturday. There wasn't much to transport from the small apartment, some furniture with sentimental value, clothes, books, Elena's paintings, Maisie's toys and collections. Dawson hired a company but made sure to help, carrying boxes, organizing, ensuring everything found its proper place in the new house. Friends from the office showed up to help. Martin, now aware of the mysterious woman and her daughter, brought sandwiches and drinks for everyone. Mrs. Martinez, who had cried upon hearing about the move, showed up with a plant to bring luck to the new home. Even Maisie's teacher came, bringing a housewarming gift. At the end of the day, exhausted but happy, the 3 of them sat on the living room sofa, now filled with labeled boxes and furniture in temporary positions. I think we need pizza, Dawson declared, putting his arm around Elena's shoulders. And ice cream, added Maisie, sitting between them. Pizza and ice cream it is, Elena agreed, smiling at them both. Our first meal at home. At home. The words hung in the air, laden with meaning. Not just a place to live, but a home. Something the 3 of them, each in their own way, had been searching for so long. In the following weeks, the house came to life. What was once an elegant but impersonal space transformed into a vibrant home. Elena's studio soon filled with colorful canvases. She had finally agreed to reduce her hours at the restaurant to dedicate more time to painting, something Dawson had insisted she should do. The kitchen, rarely used when Dawson lived alone, now exuded constant aromas. Family dinners became a sacred ritual, with Maisie excitedly recounting her day at school, Dawson sharing stories of interesting cases, omitting the more complex details, and Elena talking about her new paintings. Maisie's room turned into her little kingdom, books on the shelves, the blue diary in a place of honor on her desk, drawings covering an entire wall that Dawson had specially designated as her art gallery. The Parker bear had its own spot on the bed, now wearing a real miniature suit that Dawson had specially made. Weekends were filled with outings, movies, picnics in the park. Sometimes they just stayed home. Dawson slowly building the promised treehouse, Elena painting in the garden, Maisie reading in her special window nook. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, about a month after the move, Dawson reflected on the transformation in his life. The house, once so silent he could hear the clocks ticking, now pulsed with life. There were toys on the living room floor, drawings on the fridge door, photographs on the walls, no longer impersonal decorations chosen by an interior designer, but real memories, captured moments of genuine happiness. He was in his office, reviewing some documents, when he heard quick footsteps down the hall. "Daddy, come see my drawing." Maisie's voice echoed through the house, clear and excited. "Daddy." The word hit him as it always did, a mix of surprise, joy, and a responsibility that, instead of weighing him down, lifted him up. Dawson froze for a second, his pen hovering over the paper. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his face, not the restrained, professional smile he used in court, but something deeper, truer. A smile that came from a place in his heart he didn't even know existed before Maisie and Elena entered his life. "I'm coming," he replied, rising from his chair. He found Maisie in her room, kneeling on the floor over a large sheet of paper, colored pencils scattered around. The drawing showed 3 figures holding hands in front of a house that looked very much like theirs. "It's for the school contest," she explained, looking up at him with those expressive blue eyes. "The theme is my family." Dawson knelt beside her, examining the drawing. "It's beautiful, Maisie." "I'm not finished yet," she said, picking up a yellow pencil. "The sun is missing, and I want to draw Parker too." "I think you're going to win first place," Dawson stated with complete seriousness. Maisie smiled, but then her expression turned serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, anything." She bit her lip, hesitant. "At school, some kids asked if you're my real dad, because we don't have the same last name, and because I don't have your eyes or your hair." Dawson felt a tightness in his chest. It was a conversation he knew they would eventually have, but he hadn't expected it so soon. "What did you say?" he asked softly. "I said you are my real dad, because you love me and take care of me, and that's what dads do." She looked at him, uncertain. "Did I answer right?" Dawson had to swallow the lump that formed in his throat. "You answered perfectly, because it's the truth." He stood up suddenly. "Wait here. I have something for you. I was going to save it for your birthday, but I think now is the right time." He left quickly, returning minutes later with a small blue box in his hands. He sat on the floor next to Maisie, who looked curiously at the package. "Open it," he encouraged her. Carefully, Maisie untied the ribbon and opened the box. Inside, on a velvet pillow, lay a delicate silver bracelet. She lifted it out carefully, examining the small plate that had an engraved inscription, "Chosen with love." "It's beautiful," Maisie whispered, running her finger over the words. Dawson took the bracelet and carefully fastened it on her wrist. Then, looking directly into her eyes, he said, "Maisie, I want you to know something very important." His voice was soft but firm. "Family isn't just about blood or DNA or having the same eyes. Family is about love, choice, and commitment." He held her small hands in his. "You are my daughter, because I chose you with all my heart. And every day, I thank my lucky stars that I found you that morning at school." Maisie's eyes shone with unshed tears. Without a word, she threw herself into his arms, hugging him with all the strength her little arms could muster. "I chose you too, Daddy," she whispered against his shoulder. And from the very first day, Dawson hugged her back, closing his eyes to hold back his own tears. In that moment, he sensed a presence and opened his eyes to see Eleanor standing in the doorway, watching the scene. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Her face said it all, the teary eyes, the gentle smile, her hands clasped over her heart as if trying to contain all the emotions that were overflowing. Without words, she communicated everything that mattered. The love they had built, the family they had created, the home they had all finally found. Dawson extended an arm, inviting her to join the hug. Eleanor approached, kneeling beside them, completing the circle, the three of them together as it should be. In that silent, perfect moment, Dawson knew he had found something that no professional success could offer, that no amount of money could buy. He had found his purpose, his place in the world. He had found his family. Not by accident or birth, but by choice. The most important choice he had ever made. And as he held the two most important people in his life, he felt an absolute certainty. This was just the beginning of a life together, of memories to be made, of love to be shared. A new beginning. 6 months had passed since Eleanor and Maisie moved into Dawson's house. The seasons had changed, bringing autumn rains, winter snow, and finally the flowers of spring. But some things remained constant, like the routine that had settled into the brick house on Maple Street. Every morning, Dawson would wake to the warmth of Elena beside him, something that still surprised him after years of solitude. He'd make coffee while she packed Maisie's lunch. It was a synchronized dance they had perfected over time. "Time to get up, sleepyhead," he'd say, opening the yellow curtains in Maisie's room. "The day is waiting for you." "Just 5 more minutes," she would always reply, hiding under the covers. "That's what you said yesterday," Dawson would smile, gently pulling back the blanket. And we were late. Breakfast was a symphony of movements, backpacks being prepared, last-minute homework checks, plans for the day shared between bites of toast and sips of orange juice. "Don't forget I have my science presentation today," Maisie would remind him, carefully placing her project in her backpack. "I'll be there," Dawson would promise. I rearranged my schedule to watch. This was one of the biggest changes in his life. Before Jack, nothing was more important than his work. Now, nothing was more important than his family. Cases could wait. Maisie's childhood could not. Elena, who now worked part-time at a local art gallery, would watch them leave from the front door every morning. Dawson in his suit, now occasionally complemented by a colorful tie chosen by Maisie, and his daughter with her purple backpack and the silver bracelet she never took off her wrist. The afternoons followed their own sacred ritual. Promptly at 2:30, Dawson would leave the office, no matter which client or case demanded his attention. His partner Martin had stopped questioning it months ago. The transformation in Dawson was too obvious to ignore. It wasn't just the more frequent smile or the relaxation in his always rigid posture. It was a light in his eyes that had never been there before. At 3:15 he would park in front of the school, and as if she had a radar, Maisie was always one of the first to come out. Her blue eyes would scan the schoolyard until they found the familiar car, and then her face would light up with that smile that had the power to make Dawson's most complicated day seem insignificant. She would run to him, backpack bouncing on her back, blonde hair flying in the wind, as if every reunion was the first after a long separation. "Or how was your day?" he would ask as she hopped into the passenger seat. During the drive home, Maisie would talk non-stop about science class, the book she was reading, the new art project she was planning for the weekend. Dawson would listen with genuine attention, asking questions, laughing at her funny stories, offering advice when requested. These daily moments in the car had become special, a space just for them where they shared secrets, dreams, and plans. Sometimes they would take a detour through the park or stop for ice cream. Other times, they would simply take a longer route to prolong the conversation. "So you know, Daddy," Maisie said one afternoon, fiddling with the bracelet on her wrist. "Jenny in my class asked why my last name is different from yours." "And what did you tell her?" Dawson asked, curious. "I said it's because we chose each other, instead of just being born together," she replied with a wisdom that frequently surprised him. "And that makes our family even more special." Dawson felt that familiar tightness in his chest, a mix of pride and love so intense it sometimes felt like it couldn't fit inside him. When they pulled into the driveway, Maisie would always unbuckle her seatbelt and lean over to give him a hug before getting out. "I love you so much, Daddy," she would say, The simple words carrying the weight of 1,000 untold stories, of wishes come true, of a love that transcended blood ties. Dawson would kiss her forehead, feeling that familiar wave of gratitude that always washed over him in the simplest moments. "I love you more, my little light," he would reply in a soft voice. "Or more than words can say." Maisie would smile, satisfied, and hop out of the car, running towards the house where Elena would be waiting on the porch, as she did every afternoon when she wasn't at the gallery. Her smile upon seeing them arrive was like a beacon, guiding them home. Dawson would sometimes pause for a moment before getting out of the car, just to soak in the scene. The house that was once just a place to sleep, now overflowing with life. The woman who had taught him to love again, the girl who had transformed his world with a simple request at a school's door. He would walk towards them, feeling the weight of the day dissipate with every step. Elena would extend her hand, which he would take, their fingers lacing together like pieces that were always meant to fit. Together, they would enter the house that was now truly a home, with children's shoes at the entrance, drawings on the fridge, books scattered around the living room, and the sound of laughter echoing through rooms that once knew only silence. None of this had happened by chance. Every moment, every decision, every yes said along the way had been a choice to open one's heart, to risk the pain, to believe that happiness was possible. Family isn't who you're born with. Dawson knew now family is who chooses to stay.